Let's do it.
Welcome to Books You Never Read.
Except for those we have.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jason.
And this is our first week discussion of The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. So if you have not read to or through chapter 14?
2:14 through 13.
I might have messed up. But if you haven't read up to the point where it says in the description box below for the first week discussion, then stop the video, go back and read, and then join us when you're ready. If you're here with us live, hello! Comment up in the little chat box so we can see what you're thinking about the book. And if you're catching us on the replay, comment in the discussion box, comment box, whatever all these things are called. You get it. We want to hear what you think about the book. We're also available on YouTube Music as a podcast in case you want to hear us and not see us. And we're on little old Instagram for the memes.
This is an unmemeable book, so there will be no memes about this one.
Well, there can be memes about how much I cry.
When in doubt, you just go back to Fourth Wing.
Yeah, a lot of Fourth Wing memes. Yeah, I stopped at 14. I might need to... Oh, I don't have all we have is audiobooks. So I might have overread.
Here, I've got not audiobook.
What did we leave at? Yeah.
The last chapter was the one where she gets the permission to go to Paris.
Okay.
This is the start of 14. Trussed up like a chicken for roasting. Does that sound familiar? Okay, cool. Whatever.
I did good.
Anyway.
The reading went really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would not. But yeah, what are y'all thinking about it so far?
I'm loving it. It's really good. It's like, let me put it this way, it's fast paced but not action packed, right? Like I guess is the way to describe it. But I'm really enjoying it. It has significantly fewer named characters than our last book, which makes me very happy.
Boy, we really know who everyone is now.
Yep. We're getting to know all of their situations and everything, and I find the characters believable and their like motivations and everything.
Yes,
Believable.
Yeah.
And so that makes me happy.
So I guess like as we read this, I'm kind of comparing it to All the Light We Cannot See.
Mm-hmm.
Salt to the Sea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are big ones.
Those are the ones that we've read that are kind of same time period-ish.
Mm-hmm.
So Peggy says she can see Vienne is angry that she's leaving for a man, but Isabel is likely hurt that her sister really thinks so little of her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tension between the two sisters is very interesting. And, and really what this book is about so far is just, like, survival. Mm-hmm. And that is the case in, like, the father's backstory, in Vienne's story, and Isabella's story. And they've all... And I think I see where it's going, right? Like, basically, the family abandoned any sense of community for survival. And the same thing is sort of happening here during this Nazi occupation, Vienne abandons Rachel, basically.
That made me so sad.
Yeah. And nobody's really helping each other, or at least not, it is not being told to us that these people are helping each other, because they're all focused on survival, and I understand that. They're focusing on the survival of their kids, or whatever. I think Vienne is a bad person. but that's just me. I don't like her. I don't really care. I hope she oh my God, Drecker. What's his name? The German officer. Becker. Yeah. That's a very good German name. I hope nothing comes of their relationship, but I would not be shocked if it did. And I would be shocked if Vienne doc that something happened, but she knows where this is going. She's making her moves and she's denying herself. That's what I think is going on here. the whole thing where like he's like, just put it on the paper and it's just clerical or whatever. She knew.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she knew what would like happen,
but she
she
knows.
knew.
But then what else is she supposed to do? Because he
I
knows that she knows.
Sure.
So she's in a pickle. And someone has just pointed out that Isabel is the woman we want to be. Vienne is the woman that most of us would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because Vienne has something to lose.
Right.
And Isabel does not.
Yeah.
And so we can see this contrast between the sisters as also representing the contrast we see in France.
Yeah.
There are people who say, we surrender. We have not recovered from the previous war. And we have too much to lose.
Yeah.
And then you have those saying, we haven't recovered from the previous war.
Yeah.
We have nothing.
Yeah.
We have too much to lose to surrender.
Right.
Like kind of that way. So I think it's really interesting that we get to see that contrast in a family scale, a tiny, tiny community scale, and also on the nationwide scale.
Yeah. Like, and I want to be clear, like, I'm not sure that I'm not saying that you can, like, blame Vienne. But, like, I think that she's going to end up in a relationship of some sort with Herbeck. And, like, I get that. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I stand on, like, how forgivable is it. The whole fact that Vienne asks Rachel for forgiveness is kind of mind-boggling to me, because there's no upside to that. Like, you shouldn't have done it. That's where I stand on that. Asking for her forgiveness does nothing for you. It does nothing for her. It does. And I don't care if you feel better about that. And if anything now, like, Rachel can go tell people, like, oh, Vienne is the one who's been, like, supplying names. Or, like, if anything, it further entrenches you into... Anyway, like, I get doing it, but it is an equally selfish act to apologize to Rachel now that nothing can be done so that you can feel better as it is to provide the list in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's harsh. And, like, as a comfortable person 100 years later, here I can sit and judge people. And I
think this is very interesting. Yeah. Like, how responsible can you hold people who are victims of war and take over governments and things like that? We saw this, like, in Cambodia, right? Like, when the Khmer Rouge took over, and all of a sudden your neighbors are your jailers. And then the Khmer Rouge is taken down. And the next day, you start over, like none of it ever happened.
Yeah. And
they're not mad at their neighbors for killing their wife.
Yeah.
It just had to have happened, and now it is not happening. How do you not hold people accountable for the decisions that they made? But it's not really a decision. They are also just surviving.
Yeah.
And so, when you're just surviving, how responsible do you have to be to other people? And some people are very, very extra brave and can manage being imprisoned and helping others and not turning on other people. But I think that's an extraordinary case when that can happen.
Yeah. Well, and, like, I'm not sure that Isabel is better. Right. And, like, I kind of, I don't blame anyone for what they're doing, and I judge everyone. I guess. I don't know.
Look, she was too noisy before she started the secret thing, and so now, how does Beck not know that she's getting out early and doing this? He totally knows.
But, like, I don't think Isabel is brave. I think Isabel has, like, a brain disorder. Like, her sister specifically says that at one point. I think that's very funny. But bravery is acting in the face of fear, and Isabel is, like, not afraid. She's just impulsive and, like, a troublemaker. And there is value to that. But, I kind of get worried that, the last thing we were told was, we're going to start shooting random people if you guys keep misbehaving. Like, okay, are you a hero if you keep putting up anti-propaganda posters and random people get shot? No? Like, probably, I don't know, man. Right? Like, I think what's interesting to me about this book and why I like it so much is because I don't find World War II very interesting. I find World War I much more interesting because I think there's a lot of gray in World War I, unlike the moral setting. And World War II for me is very black and white. There's some good guys, there's some bad guys, that's it. But what's interesting about this is it's about the gray that the history books aren't really written about, you know. There's no war in this book, which is really interesting. We have one battle scene where the bomber, you know, bombs all the people who were walking, and that's terrible. But then after that there's nothing. And it's this quiet war, right? It's this occupation, and it's the people, you know, it's still a war. It's just the lowest grade possible, and the choices that you make are much more complicated, I feel like, than they would be in a combat situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we have some guesses that Rachel's going to end up living in the secret trapdoor in the barn. I agree. Yeah. And Shelby and Peggy have this book rating system that we still need to dive a little bit more into.
Yeah.
And I think they had said that our previous book that we just finished ended up scoring pretty high.
Yeah, very high.
Based on their system, which is, I'm just very interested in this. But so far, it's doing very well in the character development section because the characters are very complicated. And it's a good book when you really can feel strongly about a character and conflicted about a character.
Yeah. Does anybody feel conflicted about Beck? Like, just curious. Because he's a Nazi. I get it. But like, and so far there's no reason really to be sympathetic to him, but I wonder if we're going to like head that way, right? As like sort of a continuation of this gray, you know, like, is he just doing what it takes to survive? Because a lot of people did that and they were on the aggressive side, which makes things worse, right? It's like, that's some points against you, obviously. But I mean, like, you have, I feel like that this part needs to be, you know, I think that part is morally interesting as well. I think I don't really buy this whole like, well, you know, if he helps some people out, it outweighs, or he can somehow like undo the wrong that he has done, or like Vienne, right? Like, if she helps Rachel, does that somehow undo the wrong that she has done by turning in her name? And the answer is no. And sometimes you just have to make your choices and live with the consequences, and that's okay. And if you were just doing what you're doing so that you could survive, and then later you get found guilty in an international court of law for crimes against humanity or something, like, it is what it is, right? So let me ask you, let's like turn down the heat, because like this is a very complicated question, right? Are we getting frozen? I think we're froze. No, it's moving again. It's just struggling. I'm gonna kill my video. It's anyway.
Yeah, no one's saying that we're frozen.
Yeah, it's just struggling. It says it's not getting enough video.
Are we on the right internet?
Probably. Keep talking while I work. Yeah, we're on the right one.
Someone has said in the comments, Peggy, soldiers in war do a job. They aren't all the crazy Jim Loon from All the Light, but he's a Nazi. He has a family, but he let them break her wall and take her stuff. And I never really know how, like, responsible to hold young people, again, in positions of guards and stuff like that in a time of war. What else was he supposed to do?
Yeah.
Let everyone kill his family? And I guess the answer is yes. You know? I guess.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we find these, like, a couple of straggler leftover 102-year-old German Nazis now who've been everyone's, like, grandpa neighbor for the past 50 years, the sweetest guys on earth, but they get tried now because they're like, oh, we just realized that you were that Nazi guy that billeted in someone's house. And
yeah, well, why does age have anything to do with it? Like, I get that there's certainly an age component, but like, if you're older, are you less culpable? Like, what happens when you've been indoctrinated, or you know, when there's this threat against you? Anyway, so in saying turning down the heat, let me ask you this, right? Because like, we're talking about Nazis and like, clear wrong side, good side. And then you can be like, I don't know, man, what do you got to do to survive or whatever. I ask this question all the time in prison. So if you sell, like, is it okay for you to sell drugs to feed your kids?
No.
But like, you're doing what you gotta do to survive.
Yeah, but I'm killing someone else's kid to save my kid.
But so, do we judge that person more than we do Vienne or Beck or something like that? Like,
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I guess the answer is, if it's either you join us or your family dies, I guess you're supposed to just let your family die. That's the only right thing to do, huh?
yeah, but not really. Like, yeah, I don't know. But what's interesting with that question is whenever you talk to people, they'll say like, well, but if I don't do it, somebody will, right? Whenever you talk to people about like, well, if you sell drugs to feed your family, is that good or bad? And they say, well, if I don't do it, somebody will. And that's true.
But that had nothing to do with you.
It doesn't have anything to do with you. But it's exactly the same thing that Vienne says. Mm-hmm. You know, well,
it is.
But if I don't, and so it's very interesting to me to like see that sort of come up here. If I don't provide this list, somebody else will. So I might as well gain some advantage from this instead of whoever else it might be. And like, am I a good person? So at least the advantage is going to a good person rather than like some Nazi sympathizer who now gets extra food. You know, like they have the like town policeman that keeps showing up, and he's just like gone full Nazi now. But like he could have given them the names, and then he could have got the benefit.
But what was she supposed to do when he's asking her?
I don't know.
Like I said, we never talked about this. I don't know what Rachel is next door. Yeah. No, who deserves the consequences?
Yeah.
The freaking government. But that's the problem.
Yeah.
The government, in any capacity, is just out here making decisions, and it's the people who pay and suffer for it. The people have nothing to do with the decisions that are being made.
Yeah.
They don't have any choice. They don't have any say.
Yeah, I agree with Shelby's comment that in the case of like the drug dealer, but also here, everybody deserves help and consequences, both. And yeah, and I think that's true here, right? Like even with Beck, like what if he could somehow get out of this? But like he still deserves consequences. There's nothing that erases that in my mind. And true for Vienne, and it might end up being true for Isabel. Right now, she's kind of like this morally straight arrow, but she hasn't had to make any choices yet.
Right.
And, you know, and Vienne is having to make choices about like, well, do I do this or do I sacrifice myself or my daughter or whatever? And Isabel, I think, is going to end up having to say, do I sacrifice somebody else? Which is, we are always willing to sacrifice ourselves. Like, we have proven time and again that is not a problem. But sacrificing somebody else is usually a lot harder for us, I think.
I hate, this element of their backstory, just to switch gears a little bit, that Isabel was so much younger than Vienne. And like when Vienne had her miscarriage and stuff, she just was fine with Isabel being sent away. That is what makes me judge Vienne.
Yeah.
And it's what you mentioned earlier, that we're seeing a story of people who abandoned community
to survive.
Yeah. When really she could have survived a lot easier if she would have let Isabel in and loved her like her own, and
yeah.
I think that's one of the points here is like there wasn't enough compassion to begin with to go around.
Yeah. Yeah, but compassion is expensive.
I think it's worth it, though.
Yeah, sure.
It's
but
an investment. And you don't see that payout right away.
And I'm talking on like an evolutionary level, right? Compassion is not something that you just like see in creatures because like it is expensive, but it potentially does have a payoff. You're right. But like I shouldn't love my sister just because like someday we might have a world war and it'd be nice to have her around and like a functioning adult,
Well, I'm not saying
I'm not saying
you're thinking about that part.
Right.
She should have just loved her sister and kept her there because that's her sister. Yeah. And the two of them had already been through enough.
Yeah.
And the fact that she didn't have the capacity to cling to her little sister, that she was able to let her go.
Yeah.
That's what makes it easy for me to judge Vienne a little more harshly.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're hurting. You take care of your people.
Yeah.
That helps heal,
But it's tough, and that's why I like this book so much, because like I don't know, And like, and even with Beck, who is clearly our bad guy, right? He says things like, like, I'm sorry, but like my supervisor is telling me I have to do this, and I don't know if he's lying. He might be lying. I don't care, but what if it's a survival thing for him? Am I supposed to feel different about that than for Vienne? And I do. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but like I do.
Well, someone in the chat suspects that Beck doesn't have a wife or a child.
I did see that. I don't know. He's just so smooth when he drops that information that like I feel like it must be real, but like I don't know.
Yeah. With the contrasts that we saw, I thought it was really neat to see Vienne working on her garden, and it's so beautiful, and then, the stench of these people who come and trample across it. And then her mourning her poor garden, and here's Isabel's face all beat up and bruised up.
Yeah.
Hey, so was Gate real?
Yeah, I think he's real. But like, why did he happen? I don't know.
He got her there.
Yeah. I think his character is really interesting because he reminds me a lot of some characters that show up in Salt of the Sea, but in Salt of the Sea, they're bad criminals, and he's like a good criminal, I guess. And he does not do her any harm, and he really does take care of her. But I really thought it was going to go sideways there for a second, and I hope he comes back, I guess. I don't know that he will, and
he very well might not.
Yeah.
I think that would be very realistic.
Yeah. If anything, I think his character is important because he is the first person, sort of as this like communist instigator, to say to Isabel, your passion and your troublemaking is not a problem. It is a tool to be put to the correct use. And it kind of it's his caring about her that kind of sets her on this path, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, how far did they travel on foot? Do you know how far that was?
I didn't look it up. Yeah.
I need to look that up. My feet were hurting just hearing about it. That was crazy. And he might not have been a good person. He might not have been a good criminal.
No, he certainly might not have.
Just not like a kill 'em all or whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was a thief.
I mean, he specifically says he was in there for being a communist, and so like he might have,
gotcha.
or he claims that, and there might have been a thieving part in there, I think. But what's interesting too about this time period is like it's a time period when like there were communists, right? Like when they were just like dudes walking, and like you got them in like Portland or whatever, right? Like you don't have them in like the random countryside town, but at this time you really did. And this is sort of, I mean, the USSR at this point does exist, but it's still relatively new on the world stage, and there's just not all the baggage and all the other stuff, but it was still like illegal, but mostly because it was a threat to the status quo, and because like there at this point there's not much difference between communists and anarchists, and sometimes they just like blow stuff up. But I think the part's really interesting that like we just keep running into them because that was a thing that happened. You know?
Yeah, but so far, the storytelling of it, it's very descriptive. I can like see a film as I'm reading it. I see it in my head, a very strong picture. Here
it's kind of interesting reading it right now in a interesting political time, in a time of like inflation and things like that, and I keep like reading about like this like food that they make because they're poor, and I'm like, I can't have that. like that sounds awesome. Like, she's like, I made a potato soup, and I'm like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. But it's just It's great. Or like all all the stuff they have in their house, just there's this like chair that's been like handed down and handed down and handed down, and
I just yeeted that chair.
yeah, they just took that chair. Beck has to have told somebody about like what's in that house for
Well,
them to come like
yeah.
requisition it or whatever. But yeah, and what's also interesting is you know seeing an occupation from like this point of view, and then I think about things like kite runner and like other occupations, but things like that, and how you know that's a complicated thing, and how you make enemies along the way just by eating well, and they don't eat like little things like that, so
Yeah. So yeah, do we have any ideas about where this is going? What she's gonna do in Paris?
I think Isabel's going to die. I think she's going to be executed, and mostly just because her hero was in the First World War, and so I think it's where we're going. I don't really think Antoine is coming back. Like that's over with.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peggy's saying that she doesn't like that the Nazis took all the furniture, and like it's I don't know, right? Like the other thing too is like this whole concept of like sticking people in your house,
Building.
yeah. And so like, but it was so common,
Yeah.
at one point in history that like it's in our Constitution that you can't do it, which is kind of wild. But part of it is ingenious because it makes people suspicious of each other, like who's cozying up to their man or whatever. The other part of it is it creates unnecessary tension, and then like it's gonna get you, man. So it's wild.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd go live with Rachel. Just have the house. I'll come over here. We can all live in one bedroom together.
Yeah, I do think that's kind of like I mean, Vienne has a lot of problems, but as far as like her current situation, I feel like her original sin is pride. I will not leave this house. Mm-hmm. Even if it might be best for her family, even it might be best for her daughter, because like they're lucky that Beck hasn't like tried to touch anybody yet, but like it could have been bad. Mm-hmm. And like I get it. You care about a place, but home is where the people are, or whatever. So let's move the people and go from there.
Would he have let her?
I don't know.
I wonder.
But I also just don't think you get to make decisions on like, well, what if he doesn't? Because you don't know. Like I feel like leaving was probably the right choice.
The right choice. Yeah. Oh. Goodness. So the very first chapter is an old woman whose son is moving her into a assisted living facility. Who's that?
Yeah. Do we have the girl's name?
The old woman?
Yeah, the old woman.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is that Isabel? You think Isabel's going to be killed?
No, I don't think it's Isabel. I think it's the daughter.
Sophie?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. But like she has that thing in her trunk, right? Like she has all the paperwork for somebody named Juliette Gervais. And there's an indication that the woman is not American.
Yeah.
Because she talks bad about Americans.
So you think it's Sophie?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, like the timeline would probably add up. But okay, let's see.
The son's name is the father's name, Julian.
whose name is Julian?
The kid,
Yeah,
the son that's
but
putting
who's
him,
the father?
the
named Julian?
paperwork that she's got in the trunk.
Okay, gotcha.
Maybe it's Rachel's family and she changed her name.
Oh, maybe so.
Ah,
Maybe so.
good one.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
We know Rachel's kids' names, though.
I don't remember. Shelby mentions that she enjoys the historical references to de Gaulle, and basically the only there's the airport named after him or whatever. So he basically leads France to victory, and in the end, he sort of becomes the leader of France for a while after World War II. But what's interesting about we have the Vichy government, which is regularly maligned in history because basically they gave up and then partnered up to the Nazis. But what about their decisions, right? Do they think, well, we're just doing this to survive and keep French culture or whatever, I'm not saying they're doing the right thing, but I think I get it, and at the same time you had people trying to do appeasement of Hitler. They're you can have Czechoslovakia or you can have whatever. And they're giving up other people to try to keep peace for their own. And I do agree with the idea on some level that a government's responsibility is to its people first. But there's a very close second, and that's to everybody, right? You should try to take care of those who can't take care of themselves, just because I think that's a rule, But you can't harm your own people or ask your people to harm themselves so much for somebody who is not them,
Right.
on repeat over and over and over again.
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me.
So Vien's dad's name was Julian.
Got it.
I didn't catch that.
Got it.
Interesting.
This is making me think again about Man in the High Castle, which is an okay book, but is a better Amazon show.
Whenever it was describing a flag flying in the air, I was thinking of Nazi bookcase, Nazi lamp.
Yeah, because it's all over the place. But Man in the High Castle, the Amazon show, is a lot about sort of what would it look like if America had lost to the Nazis, and what would society look like, and it sort of touches on these same themes. What does resistance look like? What is just joining up to survive look like? And then it sort of flips the script, and what happens when that system no longer works for you. And so I think it's interesting. Maybe. Yeah, I don't disagree that a mom has to take care of her kid. I'm not. I don't,
and anytime Isabel was cutting up loud in public when Sophie was there, I was shut up.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah, I think that there are. I think there's hierarchies to this, but but I think it's really, really close, and I think. And there are situations where a harm to your own people or to your own daughter can be less than the harm caused to somebody else, and then in that case, you need to go with the somebody else thing, And I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying I understand that sort of calculation or whatever, and I think that's what's interesting about it is a lot of there's
but they are not the cause of this, and Mother Nun mentioned that too.
Mm-hmm.
You're not the one in charge here. You're not the one who has done this. And you're just doing your best.
Yeah.
And some of our best is better than others.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be doing the best in this situation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, and we have to remember too that some of these people have seen this happen before, and they're nope, anything is better than that, and that goes into the calculation. The nun specifically witnessed World War I, and so she talks about that. Julian, right? Isabel's father obviously survived World War I, did not do well, and talks about you need to get out of here. Anything's better than staying here or whatever. I do think it's interesting when Antoine goes to sign up. He was old enough, I think, to remember World War I, but he wasn't old enough to fight, if I'm not mistaken.
Who?
Antoine.
Gotcha.
Vien's husband.
Right.
But so when he goes to sign up, there's all these young kids who weren't old enough who are psyched about going. And I mean, they specifically mentioned the Somme where 750,000 people died in one battle. I don't know if you've ever seen like 1,000 people in a place, but then multiply that by 750, and that's insane.
I also think it's easy for us to compare Vienne and Isabel to The Family and All the Light We Cannot See.
Yeah.
Where they did manage to somehow keep to themselves and fight against the situation and do the right things.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not,
Yeah.
you know, it's just not real. We do good and bad, and we are good and bad, and we make mistakes, and we're the sum of all those things.
Yeah. I thought about this earlier this week just because the Super Bowl happened like last weekend or whatever. I was like, how many Super Bowls? Like how many Superdomes is 750,000 people? And it is 9 Superdomes worth of people died in that battle. I mean, that's crazy. In that one
terrible.
battle.
That's terrible.
Which, like, wasn't a short one, right? Like, it went in, like, an hour. You know, it was days. Many days. But still,
that's a lot for days.
it's still... I mean, it's a lot for anything. Yeah, you're right.
I was a grown person before I ever watched Saving Private Ryan. Like, that came out when I was a long time ago. But I was way old when I first watched it. And just that first scene...
Mm-hmm.
I cried so hard I had a migraine for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad.
Well, now I kind of want to go back and watch Inglourious Bastards again because, like, that's a tough movie.
Someone mentioned that.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm thinking
I've
about it.
seen
It's good.
that. Maybe I've seen bits and pieces.
Yeah. And I really enjoy 1914, which is obviously about World War One.
Was that the one shot?
Yeah.
Go.
It never cuts shots. But, like, it's just, it really does a good job of showing, like, the brutality and sort of, like, the decision-making and just some of the nonsense that happens in these things. But
war is tough. So, that's where we are. Reading our historical fiction. It's going to make me want to rip my eyeballs out.
I feel like all historical fiction, like, that's popular is about World War II. Like, it just...
We could have read The Women.
What's that about?
Vietnam.
We can still do that.
That one's on my
and
list.
I'm obviously there's historical fiction about other time periods, but, like, the ones that, like, get real big tend to be about World War II, I think. So. Yeah. Peggy says war extends beyond the battlefield, and I think that's what I really like about this book is, like, I'm interested by history and by war or whatever, but, like, you don't get but I'm more interested by stories. And so, like, that's what I think is really interesting about that movie 1914 is it's not so much about World War One, it's about this boy who gets sent in at the very end of a world war, and, like, it's kind of about, like, what happens when you're the last dude to die, right? Like, and it kind of follows that sort of storyline. Or what happens when you're the last battalion to be sent to the front lines or whatever, and, like, this thing that's winding down. And that story makes these, like, numbers and the statistics so much more real and horrifying. And I think this does the same thing by kind of exploring what it does to just the people that aren't really involved, that never asked for it.
Yeah. I think this is already a movie. Because this is an older book. 2020. 2018. Oh my. Yeah, seems about right. No. This is not the same. Horror adventure, not the same.
I was telling somebody about All the Light We Cannot See and how I did not like the Netflix adaptation, and it's not the adaptation's fault, it's just that it can't capture the poetry.
I don't know that we can make a judgment. We didn't even watch all of one episode.
Because it's not the same. What makes the book so good is the man's writing. Like, it's phenomenal. Yeah. And you just cannot translate that, unfortunately.
Okay, so in 2019 it was announced that this is going to be a movie. But, like, where is it? Yet. Anyone already said?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. pandemic slowed it down.
Peggy says she can judge for us, and it was not good. All right. Well, do you have anything else to say? We're coming up on 50 minutes.
No, that's... Well, let me check my notes. I did take notes. I was running on a treadmill and taking notes while listening to the audiobook. I'm surprised I didn't go flying off that thing. Silly. But when you think about it, you just gotta write it down.
I'm very excited to get into like the tension, because I feel like there's already so much tension, and into the like drama of it, because I've already enjoyed just like the background building so much, Mm-hmm. It's definitely a book I'm going to recommend to people already. Just already I'm going to recommend it.
Yeah. So, if we do really like this author, and we like the book, I do want to keep the women on my list, because Vietnam time period is my area of historical interest. Yeah, I saw Dakota and Elle Fanning were slated to be the sisters.
Very cool.
Interesting. But, yeah, COVID slowed it down, and who knows if that'll ever get picked back up. Yeah. I hope so. But either way, I see a movie in my head when I read this book, so
yeah,
it's fine.
All right.
All done.
Well, we will be back next week for
Let's talk about what chapters we're supposed to read.
Yes.
Stand by.
It's 14.
You have to click so many things now to get to the description box. Chapters 14 through 26.
Yep.
Yeah, I did read too far.
That's okay.
Yeah, good for me.
My mom is reading this one with us, and she couldn't stop reading, so she just kept going. Which is really good. Yeah.
So, there we are. Happy reading, everybody.
Yeah. We will be back next Sunday, 10 a.m., same time. And I suppose next week we'll be announcing our next book as well, which is going to be your pick.
Y'all load me up with some recommendations.
And we can throw them in the hat or not, however you want to do it.
I'm still, chasing Hail Mary feels. I want to feel that way about a book again.
Yeah.
And
about a sci-fi book or a different...
I don't know. And I don't know how to tell you what I felt, but I'm chasing that feeling. I have a book hangover from 10 books ago.
You know what's interesting? This is how I describe Hail Mary. Hail Mary felt like home. The main character and Rocky, they made home and a family in the middle of nowhere, so far away, and you could feel that. You could feel their camaraderie and their little community and everything, and you felt like you were a part of it. And man, it was just a beautiful book. It was so good.
What the River Knows.
Write it down.
I'm writing it down. I have a few new things in the hat. And while we were on vacation, I tried to read a couple of the things, and I couldn't get into any of them. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up.
All right, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. We will see you guys next week. Go ahead and start your reading. And
don't cry too much. Oh, wait. That's me.
Yeah. Wait. So real quick, what was the thing you cried at first? You said you cried twice in the first three
chapters?
Well,
okay. So I cried just with the prologue. First chapter, the old lady getting ready to go to the old lady home. I think I cried when Antoine left. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember. I don't know. I was scrubbing the shower.
I was like, I'm going to cry. This is going to be a problem. And then I never did, and I forgot I was supposed to. So,
these are such hard truths to live.
Yeah.
This is just hard. And I just get in my feels about
it. I guess I feel about it differently, and this will be the last thing we say before we leave.
Sorry, false goodbye.
Welcome.
Louisiana goodbye.
But I've said this a couple times that dudes have this weird thing where you just give them directions and you say go march over there, and they're just like okay, right? And that's why dudes do war. It's not because dudes are stronger, because dudes do war because we take orders and we don't question it. And Anton clearly didn't want to go. But he was just like, this is what happens to me now. And he just and there's something in the dude brain that just puts himself into the blender. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And maybe that's why I didn't have the same sort of reaction. I was just like, to me, it was just like, yeah, this is what happens. Like, you just go. And yeah, interesting. I wasn't like excited for him. I wasn't like the kids in the bottom, but like that were excited to go to war. And I would never be excited to go to war. But if somebody was like, "You got to go," I'd be like, "It's the thing that happens, I guess." I don't know. Anyway, that was it. Bye.